Morning, everybody, and thanks for taking out a portion of your time this morning. So let's get right to it. Review and approve our July meeting minutes.
I can move that motion.
I'll second.
Seconded by Bill to approve as written the July meeting minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody that had a hand in those. So next up on the agenda would be the draft FY25 financials.
Do not have those ready for this meeting. I was aiming to get them. This week has been a little bit rough. As I was telling Richard and Bill, my daughter is homesick with me. So that has, I'm going to be trying to get you the financials this upcoming week, if possible, but I don't have them for this meeting today.
Okay. Yeah, sorry to hear of your daughter's ailments there. So let's move along then to draft FY26 budget.
I sent this out a couple days ago. I will share my screen and we can go over it. The highlights of this are that we are projecting.
Claire, before you start, I just need a little clarification. Is this federal fiscal year? I don't understand what.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's why it's draft. I was thinking state fiscal year.
I'm sorry, no, it is the state fiscal year. So this would be starting in July 1st and going through June 30th. And it is a draft because it hasn't been approved yet.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, yeah, no, every year we aim to get this ready before the start of the fiscal year, but many years we don't.
Okay, that's all right. I just wanted to make sure I was clear about what it was. Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, so let me share my screen.
Oh, it says, yeah, okay.
So just to walk you through this, this first sheet here is just a summary. This is the high level we usually give to the board. It doesn't quite show the level of detail as the next pages, but the big picture here is that we are projecting about a 23% budget increase. A lot of that is passed through to districts. Our overall budget is 88% passed through to districts, and then 11% sort of overhead for personnel and supplies and whatnot for council. Some other, I guess, high level considerations about how I went through this budget this year. Core services, ag CWIP, and tactical basin planning are all set quantities. They're known amounts. They're pretty easy to budget for because it's defined in our parent agreement how much we have for the fiscal year and then how much gets divided between council and districts. The more uncertain portions of our budget are always our DEC enhancement grants and the Trees for Stream grants. Those are project-based, and so how much we receive out of those grants is really tied to how much project work happens under those grants. We get a percentage of the grant, up to 15% for program delivery. And it's always difficult to gauge year to year just how much money will get out the door to districts. Depends on demand for the grants as well as districts' capacity to do the projects. So this is so for this column here, the enhancement and Trees for Streams, these are always just going to be our best estimates, but they are in general in line with what we've seen in past years, as well as accounting for our known projects that we already have in the works. So some background information. And then at the bottom here, you'll see all of these projected net surplus information or projected surplus deficit is 0. The reason why is because we budget most of these grants. We are able to only charge up to, they're reimbursable. So we can only charge up to what we expend. So we will never, have um, like a surplus or on many of these individual grant items. There are some exceptions. Tactical basin planning, core services, and ag CWIP actually can have a surplus or a deficit, but we are fully budgeting those because they are also our most flexible funding sources. So that's the overall strategy. And then, as I put in my email to you, we are almost entirely state funded. So most of this is our grants from the state of Vermont, and then only a handful are federal pass through. I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear the noise in the background.
Not,
Okay.
not bothering.
Okay.
Oh, I got a question though.
Yes.
The 23% budget increase, is the money already allocated for that? Or is that,
Yes.
okay,
This entire budget is being built off of money from grants that we already have received.
okay,
So there's no budgeting for, projected future grants that we may or may not get. And there's no reliance on retained earnings. So all of this is just projecting what we expect to get going forward. I do have the more detailed breakdown of individual grants on this page. I'm not going to go over it in detail, but if you have questions about any of these individual components, happy to answer that. It also has a more detailed breakdown of our expenditures, and the biggest portion of council's budget is always personnel. So some of the supporting detail I've provided in the following pages is about how we came to these numbers. Our total personnel cost is, we are only looking at about a $3,000 increase year over year. The reason for that is mostly just time reallocations. We used to budget a lot of Jill's time to council. We are reducing that. Michelle is not going to be as involved in council as Jill was. So that's been the big savings to council, is reducing her time. And then we are also budgeting less of Jess's time. She is doing more VACD finance work. So there was a significant reduction in the amount of time she will spend. Mostly she'll just be doing trees for streams and tactical basin planning going forward, as opposed to some of the other more general administrative work. A little bit more of Lena's time has been budgeted at council, though Lena and Emily both are almost entirely supported by council. Emily is budgeted 80% to council, Lena 95%. Julia, our communications manager, is a 50-50 split. And then I am being budgeted 80% to council as well, which is a little bit of an increase. It's a 5% increase. There is a new position we're budgeting for. It's actually a position we've budgeted for in the past, but we just have not hired yet. This is a human resources manager. The idea for this position would be that council would support a human resources professional in being able to provide more direct services to districts. This person would also work part of their time for VACD and just do sort of human resources functions for VACD. So that would be new, but we have budgeted this line item in the past, so there's not a significant change to our personnel budget. Even though this would be a new person, we just historically have not filled that role, or at least we weren't able to last year. So that's the overview. The rest of the items are basically flat budgeted year to year, including our office expenses, travel expenses, things like that. And then the rest of it is just all, various pass-through to districts. And so we're projecting 3.8 million in pass-through to districts this year. So. Are there any questions?
Don't see any at this point from my end.
Claire,
Yeah,
did you?
thank
Was
Go
that
ahead.
detail also included in what you forwarded to us?
Yes.
Okay, because I downloaded it, but for some reason, I think my download only did the first page. Okay. I'll
I'm
go
happy
back.
to resend. The packet I sent you included a lot of supporting detail about how we come to our personnel calculations. And
Oh,
just so
you
you
don't need to
know,
resend.
yeah. So, and just so you know, we're sending that to you for your information. We're probably going to clean up this a little bit before we send it out to the full board. But we historically present the full information to the finance committee, even though it's a little bit too much detail usually for the full board. So, if you did dig into the details and have any questions about that, I'm happy to talk through it, but usually this is pretty standard. We do the same thing year over year. The one big difference, and this applies to all of our grants and contracts, is that the indirect rate, due to Vermont state policy and federal policy, the indirect rate, which usually covers overhead off of all agreements, it used to be 10%. That's been increased to 15%. So that impacts all of our budgeting, all of our grants, and the personnel agreement. But we're also getting, 15% from our funders. So it's just a little bit of a shift. But really that's the only big change in how things were calculated this year.
Do you see much of an issue about 26, 27 as far as the amount that we're going to need for funding? Are we going to be
That's
short
the-
or?
We're fine for FY 26. As I put in my email, even though there's a lot of uncertainty at the federal level, and even though there's some uncertainty with the Clean Water Fund, FY 26 should be fine because we're working off of agreements that have either been locked in for this fiscal year, and we've heard from our funders that there's very little to no chance of clawback, or they've been allocated from using past fiscal year money. So, we're going to keep talking with our funders, but we don't think that there's much risk for these grants that are on this page right now. Going forward, FY 27 and beyond, that's a much greater unknown. Many of these grant agreements here do extend through future fiscal years. So enhancement, I think Lena, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're all the way out to like 2031 or something with some of these enhancement agreements.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah. So, and then some of our Trees for Streams agreements are through 2028. So we should be okay for this fiscal year and next fiscal year, I believe. After that, it starts getting a little bit more questionable. But yeah, that's, I guess, my best assessment right now.
So right now you're showing 25.
26.
This is 26?
This is 26. Yeah.
Okay. So the questionable one is 27 or is it 28?
The further we go out, the less certain we get. I think 26 is pretty certain. 27 is a little less certain. 28, I really wouldn't be able to say.
Okay. But the one you're showing right now, July 25 to June 26, this is the
Yep.
26.
Yep.
That's what you call this one.
Yes, this is our current fiscal year that we're currently in. And all of these agreements here, I believe, are solid. We've already
Okay.
executed them, and there's little chance of clawback.
No, I always have trouble with calendar year and fiscal year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you're talking about 26, that's last fiscal year, right?
No,
That's
it's
this current fiscal year.
It is?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it says July, oh yeah, I'm sorry. I understand fiscal years, I have my years mixed up.
That's
All right, sorry about that.
I
Jeez.
have the same trouble putting this together. It's so hard. Keep yourself situated. Okay.
Jeez.
I should have looked at your top. It says FY 26, duh.
Yes.
Ugh.
All
Okay,
right. Are there any other questions I don't know if you had the chance to take a look at this in any detail, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I don't know. I thought it looked, I thought it looked pretty reasonable. I haven't looked at really past years, but that was my thought.
No, Claire, I thank you for the detail on this. And again, just to draw people's attention to the confidential couple of pages on this that, opens up and examines people's salaries. So just be sensitive to that information. It's certainly provided to us by Claire so that we can try to understand and see what's going on. But, the greater council, folks on council really don't need to see that in a very visible or public way. Certainly if they ask to see it, we've got the information for them. But the other thing that I just wanted to draw everyone's attention to, I'm looking at the FY26 budget detail now here, but way over on the right, Claire has shown the number of sub-agreements that are associated with the FY26 budget. And, it's what, 30, almost 40 sub-agreements that are or will be associated with this budget. So there are a lot of moving parts for Claire and the other staff people to keep track of on this. And that, I think, by and large, is a reflection of our grant funders, the people that give us the money from the state. It's until there's some better paradigm that's been offered up, we're left with administering and overseeing all these different sub-agreements.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm actually looking at this now, realizing that column is not fully filled in. I've only filled it in for tactical basin planning, core services, and ag CWIP. We actually have quite a few more sub-agreements. I think in total, this is going to look at like 150 sub-agreements or something like that, because we have quite a few under our enhancement and our trees for streams that are not captured here currently. I can fill that information in, but we do end up usually having somewhere around 100 or so sub-agreements any given year. So
it's quite a bit larger.
Where is that? I don't see that.
Way to the right.
The last column on the right.
Okay, well,
sorry.
okay, yeah, that's the one thing I couldn't read it. Oh, okay, I was looking at the first, I see 13, 14, 13.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But there's quite a bit more than what's shown
Sure.
there, Claire.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
I'll go back and look at
Okay.
that. So I just have a question. Rick, thanks for the reminder about salaries. That was, but just for clarification, I mean, if given NRCC's a state agency, what is the well, I shouldn't say requirements, but the how public are employees' salaries, and then how does that potentially conflict with employees who work for both NRCD and NRCC? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. And the answer here is that this information is public. So we, council is an agency of the state. It is securing these services via a contract. And so usually the level of detail we would provide would be things like, an hourly rate per position and a total per position in the form of a contract.
Right.
And so that we do have that information later in the packet that we can talk about. I think what I'm always sensitive to is the fact that this level of detail that we provide here is more than is required by the state disclosure. So we do usually clean it up a little bit. And like we also try to take people's names off of it.
Right. Yeah.
But it's, Yeah, I'm happy to go through any particular questions you have, but the short answer is this
Sure.
is public information. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not asking because I'm getting ready to run out and show it to anybody. I just was, okay, thanks for that clarification, Claire.
So, looking at the agenda, I think we're looking to have, if discussion on the draft FY26 budget is complete, we're looking for a motion. And then the idea, if Finance Committee is okay approving this, then the budget would be presented to council for their consideration. Is that right, Claire?
That's right.
Okay. So I don't want to stifle any more conversation on the FY26 budget, but if there aren't any more questions or comments, clarifications, then I guess I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion to approve the FY26 budget.
I'll second it.
Motion by Richard, seconded by Kate to approve FY26 budget as presented. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. I will be working to provide the version that goes to the board. And so as part of that, I'm going to fill in the rest of the sub-agreement information, and then we'll do some of the cleanup work around the salaries. But thank you. We'll discuss this at the board meeting next week.
Yeah, and thanks for sharing your little girl with us.
Yep.
Thank you for being understanding.
Hi, Robin.
She's learning about government finances.
Yep. At an early age.
Very early.
Okay,
All
well,
right.
Rick, I think we're ready for the next item if there's no
Yep.
other questions.
So you
Okay,
mentioned
that would be-
a meeting next week?
We have a
Council
board
has
meeting next
on
week on Thursday.
August 20.
Oh, that's the one I can't attend. Okay.
Yeah, Richard, if you can get your alternate to be aware of that meeting and even attend, that would be great.
What's the time for that meeting?
August 28th, council meeting is at 1 p.m. to 3:30 p.m.
Yeah, unfortunately, I got a 2 o'clock appointment, so I'll have to get a hold of my alternate.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So moving on to grant proposals, approvals, and updates. I guess the first item would be our FY27 Core Services budget request. This would be a memo provided to the Vermont Agency of Agriculture that identifies what council would like to have the agency request on our behalf.
Yes, I will share my screen for this as well. I did send out a memo, but it was very late last night. So I'm not sure that you've had the chance to take a look. We do this every year. So the way our budget process goes is because our line item is in the Agency of Agriculture's budget, we submit a memo and budget request to the Agency of Agriculture. They take it under consideration and they submit an amount. They have never submitted our full amount in their ultimate budget request, but that is usually our goal. And then what ends up happening from there is VACD then engages with the legislature to secure whatever funding does not get passed on by the Agency of Agriculture. And I'm happy to talk about the dynamics of this. It's kind of a weird situation. It has maybe some strategy considerations, but the memo I drafted here reflects a sort of a base funding of 862,000. That is what our current allocation is in FY 26. And it's what I'm recommending that we ask for in FY 27. We've had conversations with the conservation districts around this, and there's just a general sense. I've mentioned this in finance committee meetings before. There is a general sense that because the state's financial situation will be pretty heavily impacted by potential federal cuts, that this that, as I've mentioned before, the 3 million is probably going to be a little tone deaf, even though we do want to ultimately keep working towards that goal. And I do acknowledge that here in this memo. But potential increases or asking for potential increases is likely not going to gain much traction in a year where many agencies are probably going to be looking at cuts, as well as many nonprofits and grant recipients may be looking at retraction of funding. So we do anticipate some very hard conversations, but I think maintaining a level funding is actually a reasonable goal that is neither out of touch with the political reality and would help us. I think it's doable for us and our organization. So that's where I'm at. And I'm happy to hear your thoughts.
That 862 ask, does that include any, there's going to be healthcare increases, et cetera, et cetera. Shouldn't that be factored in? Because they're liable to try to cut us from 862.
Usually what will happen is that the Agency of Agriculture will cut this number, and then we will go back to the legislature and ask for a higher number. I think that, you're right, Richard, that expenses keep going up, and level funding never accounts for increases, those kinds of cost increases. I'm happy to talk about that. I think we have budget flexibility potentially to cover that, at least for council. For the district level, that's a little bit more of a question and something I would ask you all to weigh in on. I think this is just a balance between what is going to gain us the most sort of goodwill politically, unfortunately, with both our agency partners and with the legislature, while trying to also meet the needs that exist. So if this doesn't strike that balance, I'm happy to look at a different number, but yes, you're absolutely right. It would be level funding, so it wouldn't account for cost increases, and we would have to make up the difference elsewhere.
The thing is I'm fine with the number, but they're going to cut it. I hate going back to the trough, but I guess that's the way the system is designed. I don't appreciate it, but.
Yeah. And one thing we've heard in the past is that, so this always happens. I anticipate the Agency of Agriculture will cut this number. And then we'll go back to the legislature and we'll do some kind of negotiation there. And so we do actually have another opportunity, or VACD has the opportunity to form a strategy around what they end up talking with legislators about. Ideally, their request is in line with this request that comes from council. However, there is opportunity to sort of shift the strategy depending on what we hear from the legislature. So, and I do want to just, I guess, also, before we get too much into this, really emphasize the line here that council is making a request as an agency and would not do lobbying, but VACD does do lobbying and has a lot more flexibility to sort of make various requests that are not in alignment with the state agency side of things. So yes, I understand that it's a frustrating dynamic that it gets cut, we go back, we have to ask for more. I don't think we're going to change that dynamic. And part of the reason why is that the Agency of Agriculture has been instructed by the governor's office to either flat budget their own budget or to make cuts of their own budget. And because we are in their budget, it ends up being a zero-sum game between us and the Agency of Agriculture. And so they've explained this to us many times. If it comes down to can they support their own staff or can they support us, they usually end up going with trying to support their own staff. And while that may be frustrating for us, I do think it makes sense strategically because, again, we have the Association of Conservation Districts, which can lobby for an overall increase to the agriculture budget, whereas Agency of Ag cannot. And so we end up doing this sort of back and forth with the Agency of Agriculture. They know what we need. I believe they support us, but they end up cutting us because we can do that back and forth with the legislature directly. They're relying on us essentially, I think, to make the case with the legislature because they can't.
Do you have any idea what that 862 is to the ag budget? What's the percentage? A tenth?
I don't know.
Half?
It's very small. It's very small. I don't know.
Could you possibly figure out a general idea what that is of their total budget?
I could try.
Not
I
right
probably,
off, but I mean,
yeah,
yeah, is it 1% or is it 0.5 or
that's a very good question. I can try to have that for the board meeting next week.
okay.
Yeah.
That's a point you could utilize in discussion. You're cutting us and we're only X% of the whole budget.
Right.
Yeah.
It's better under this administration or this Secretary of Ag than it was under the previous one. That I do recall.
Okay.
Right, Rick?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit more sympathy and understanding currently than we've had in the past. I just, if you've had various meetings, Claire, that none of us have been party to, and folks on the ground are suggesting this 862 request for 27, I guess that's a little surprising to me based on what we have been asking, repeatedly. And if you look at what we've asked for and what we've actually received over the last, say, 5 years, I mean, there's still quite a gap. So I was sort of anticipating for FY27 request something on the order of $1 million, which accounts for last year's 862. It accounts for some growth in we know that expenditures are always increasing. And it also reflects our, continued interest in trying to approach what we've said repeatedly for the last several years, the $3 million need. So I guess, I was a little surprised to see this memo. I'm looking at it now, talking about 862. So it doesn't give us much room. It in fact, sort of implores all the districts, it implores the ACD to do kind of an aggressive campaign with the legislature just to keep us at level funding.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I can go both ways. I could argue for a higher request. I guess I could argue for 900,000, which represents, a certain increase. And as a last resort, coming in and asking for level funding. So given all the uncertainty that's going on, it's too bad that we have to kind of walk away from and overlook what we still believe is the need.
I agree with Rick, and I think we should go in for 962.
Okay. So I'm doing a little bit of math here. If we went for $1 million, that's a 16% increase. If we did something more like 950, that's a 10% increase. So
That's realistic.
that, and Richard, that does get to your concerns. It's also something that is, we can show our work that's justifiable in terms of how we make the case to the Agency of Agriculture. It's essentially just base funding plus inflation factor.
Right.
So something like 950 would be in the ballpark of 10%. I will say that the conversations I've had have been a lot of preparing us for the possibility of cuts. I know we're going for the 3 million, but there's always the possibility that we'd get less than the 862 from the legislature. And part of the reason for going in with a lower number is to show that we are already doing the work to try to help out in a spirit of collaboration with the state, that we are being good faith partners. The higher we go with that number, the less we end up, I think, coming across as good faith partners. But like I said, something like 950 has a logic behind it.
And
So-
put a 954 or throw another number in there to look like we actually calculated something.
I could do the actual number I came up with is $948,200.
Oh, that
So
sounds good.
that is the 10% increase.
Okay,
That's good.
that
Is,
sounds good to me.
Yes.
is 10% what you would, is that the actual increase in whatever staff costs?
I
Or is
would
it-
say that's reasonable. It's hard to calculate because every district is different and this supports districts. But one thing I have heard from districts, healthcare is a big component of staffing costs that went up, 20 to 30%
Yeah.
last
1 or
year.
2%.
We can't really predict whether or not that will be a continual rate. I hope not. That would be a crazy situation for it to go up that much 2 years in a row. But I believe that 10% would at least accommodate that possibility. And then would allow for, staff raises, et cetera. Usually the actual inflation adjuster is something around 2 to 5%. In recent years, it's been more like 5% just because inflation has done some interesting things. So I think that if you penciled in 5% as a baseline inflation plus an additional 5% for the specific ways that this money plays out within district budgets, particularly staffing costs, I think that's a reasonable number, although that's just back of the napkin kind of calculation. So does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
And you think that the Department of Ag budget is going to go in either level funded or
Yes.
reduced. This
Yes.
letter to the Department of Ag, like if we recommended, let's say 900 or 950,000, would they necessarily submit that as our request, or
No.
do they could change that?
They can, and they do change that.
Okay.
We have never gotten they have never submitted what we've submitted to them. We've requested 3 million. They submitted, last year they submitted 100 I believe what did they submit?
Mhm.
They
was
submitted a
pretty-
cut for us last year, not just baseline funding, but an actual cut. I think they've submitted back to, 512 or something.
6.
Yeah. So, I mean, if we submit something with a little higher ask and with the acknowledgement that, I don't know, that this is, that it's a tough budget year, but that, this is what is really needed to support, just to continue with the costs that we have in terms of inflationary increases. I mean, I don't know. they aren't necessary. I mean, I guess I think we could do that, but be a little bit obsequious about our ask so that it doesn't,
Sure.
I don't know.
I
Maybe,
can take another stab at this and we can have the higher number. I can work in language around the acknowledgement of how, how difficult the fiscal year is going to be.
sure, yeah.
Yeah, that we can do that. Yes, we can do that. I can rework this and we can talk about it. Like ultimately this would get approved by the board. So we'll be talking about this at the board meeting.
Yep.
But I can take that recommendation from the finance committee. We'll also be talking with the district managers about this on Monday. So we'll have another chance to run that by them. So the
Excellent.
sequence will then be finance committee recommendation, I'll revise, go to the board, the district managers, they'll weigh in, and then go to the board with information from both those groups.
Sounds
Well,
good.
in that case, there's certainly no harm in us trying to go for a bigger number.
It's really just optics and
Yep.
how much goodwill
Right.
we're
Right.
securing. But
We're going for a bigger number, but it's actually 1/3 of what's been requested in the past.
Right.
it is.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
We are in that light, we are giving quite a bit of ground, but it's also we've never gotten that higher number. So
It's
and I
like
think
the
part of that
Mac's
is
gonna
because
cut
of
it if they feel like they have to anyway, so.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like the business I was in. You can't keep shorting the cow grain and expect as much production.
Right.
Yes, and I think we've gotten to the point where we are with our finances by a history of doing just that, where we were doing a lot of cuts on our end before anybody forced us to. So I'm sympathetic to it.
Yeah, just so we don't go backwards to the point where we're back to $7,000 a year from the state. That was
Yeah.
very hard to deal with.
Right.
Yep. And I do want to, I guess, highlight the language I put in down here about maintaining our workforce.
Yep.
That has been, that's really been what we've been saying to a lot of our funders at this point, including the Clean Water Board. And I believe it will be one of the Clean Water Board's priorities is to maintain the existing workforce. So that lens, I think, will help us. And it also it supports the inflation adjustment that you propose, Richard. So thank you. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah, Claire, thank you for your willingness to, I'm looking at the memo now and hopefully you would agree that it doesn't require too much in the way of tweaking the memo and certainly the page that follows it. If we're all in agreement on this call for using 948 to 100, roughly a 10% increase, it won't be too hard to make those adjustments in the figures on that column. So I think it's a good strategy. We could ask for 3 million and we know where that's going to end up.
Right.
But
Yep.
reasonable 10%.
That would be toned
If
down.
yeah. All right. Well, I think I'm looking at the agenda and Claire was hoping we would take a vote and approve, the finance committee would approve what we just agreed to. So
I'd
is
accept
there
a
a motion?
motion. Yeah, thank you.
I could move that motion with the increase of ask that we were talking about.
948, 200.
Yes.
I'll second that.
Richard made the motion, seconded by Bill, to alter the memo to request for FY27 $948,200, representing roughly a 10% increase. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, everyone. I want to acknowledge that we are at this point running pretty far behind in our agenda. The agenda was probably pretty optimistic. Rick, I know that you need to go at 9:30, is that right?
Yeah,
Okay, I think in that case, we don't have any other items that require a vote, but I wonder if you'd like to talk about the NRCC board and officer succession before you head out?
yeah, I can do that, Claire. Just in brief, I've been the Central Supervisory Union rep to council for, I don't know, 10 years, maybe more than 10 years. But, we've had discussions at the Winooski District and the White River District. We ended up considering having an election. The election process is a bit flawed because, again, according to statute, the only two people that would vote on the supervisory union rep would be the two chairs of the two districts. So as a result of sort of that oddity, we've decided amongst ourselves that at the end of this calendar year, December 31st, I would step down as the Central Supervisory Union rep, and someone from the White River District would then become the Central Supervisory Union rep. In so doing, then I would not be chair of council anymore. I can't really talk about what might or will be happening at other supervisory unions regarding representatives to council, but it's conceivable that there could be some change in supervisory union representatives elsewhere. But specific to Central Supervisory Union, I will be stepping down as the rep and therefore as chair at the end of the calendar year. So I think there's motivation to have some discussion at the other supervisory unions to see if there's any interest for someone else to become chair.
I think we're starting this conversation with the finance committee because you all have already shown a lot of dedication. And so just keep it in the back of your mind about this need. And Rick, did you have anything else to add with this?
Not that I can think of, Claire, no. No. I think there's discussion going on at the White River District about who they would like to designate as the next Central Supervisory Union rep. And then sort of associated with all this is we're approaching the end of the calendar year and entering into the election season for supervisors. My understanding is that at least one seat at every district is up for renewal across the state. So there's that whole process going on as well.
We'll be sending out guidance about district elections, hopefully by the September 1st is our goal. And we'll also be putting out advertisements in AgriView and some other places, just alerting the general public that these positions exist and to contact their local district if they're interested in being involved. So, yep. Okay, well, I think just in general, council has operated for many, many years based on, whoever was able to volunteer is sort of ends up being, who's in the room, who's in the board chair position. Rick, I just want to say thank you for all of your many years as board chair. I know you're not heading out quite yet, but the fact that we've had that continuity and that leadership has, I think, been a part of why we've been able to grow as an entity and organization. And so now that we're facing a new board chair, this is sort of going to be a little bit of just a test of the, systems and procedures that we have. So we may need to look at some other things with council, things like formally designating. We will have to do, an election to appoint the board chair from among council. And, you know, as part of that, we may also want to more formally look at the finance committee itself and our other committees and have more of a specific charter for those. And so there are a number of these items in the background of just sort of how we're doing business as council that I think we'll be talking about it over the next couple months. But
Yeah, and Richard, Bill, Kate, I mean, for your benefit, hopefully whoever the next chair of council might be, I'm really hoping that it is a supervisory union representative rather than some individual from either ANR, Agency of Ag, or UVM Extension. I think, you know, for council to work as intended, it really needs to be a district owned, you know, it needs to be owned by the districts. So hopefully the next chair will be a supervisory union representative.
Yep,
That's my hope anyway.
I would agree with that, Rick. You have done a superb job with it so far, so hopefully we can find somebody to pick up the reins, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think that's all we have for this item. Rick, I know you have to go, but I guess I'd propose if there's no other questions, going back to our grants items. Okay. Rick, I don't know how long you're able to stay on, but I think the next item we had for discussion was the local work group deliverable.
Okay. Yeah, I've got like 5 more minutes, so.
Okay. So I'll just talk about this really quick. I had brought before this committee a couple months ago the idea that we would include the local work group as a deliverable under our core services agreement. You all approved that. Unfortunately, the Agency of Agriculture did not agree to that change within the core services agreement because, as they noted rightly, some districts have that as a deliverable under their Ag CWIP awards. And so they had a concern about, you know, double counting that deliverable and how they just wanted to talk a little bit more about how that actually works. We've had a meeting with the Agency of Ag. I think at this point, everybody's sort of conceptually in agreement that we can shift this deliverable to core services. It probably makes more sense next year because that will align with our new Ag CWIP agreements. And so we can definitely move in that direction. But I just wanted to give you that update and see if there's any questions or concerns. If not, I think we'll just pick up this conversation for next year's agreements.
Yep.
Under FY 27.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, everybody, I'm sorry I got to jump off. I think between Bill and Richard and Kate, you still have a quorum.
Yep.
So if those of you that can stay on, thank you very much for doing so. And I will see many of you next week at council, and then tomorrow there's a full board meeting for VACD. So maybe I'll see you then there. All right. Have a good day. Thank you.
Rick.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Our next agenda item is Ag CWIP. We have two sort of updates there. Emily, I think we're not quite at the point of talking about specific amendments, but if you want to give an overview of those two items, pass it off to you.
Yep. So we have about 1 year left on our Ag CWIP agreement. It's a 4-year agreement. It ends end of June 2026, so just under a year. And so we've been reviewing our deliverables, where we're at. Collectively, we're doing pretty good. There a couple deliverables that were slightly under where we should be at this point. But overall, we're on target or just under with most things. So that's in terms of our parent agreement, right? So our NRCC obligations to Agency of Agriculture, they're looking pretty good for the most part. When we look at individual district sub-agreements, some districts are underperforming, some districts are overperforming, and the degree by which that's occurring changes district to district. So we are currently collecting proposals for amendments from the districts. Our hope is that we will end up likely needing a parent amendment with the Agency of Agriculture, but our hope is that we won't need a change in budget. So for districts who are not quite reaching their deliverables, we have other districts that are overperforming and are kind of making up for that discrepancy. We are considering, given that some are overperforming, that if there's a district that's underperforming, potentially making cuts accordingly to their budget and shifting that money to those that are overperforming. We're still collecting proposals, so we don't have the overall picture yet of exactly how this is going to impact our parent agreement, to what degree we'll have latitude to do that. But that's sort of where we're at. I think the other thing to note is that as much as possible, we try to avoid making budgetary changes, or particularly budget cuts to districts. So we're providing a lot of opportunity if a certain deliverable is not going to be achievable, but they can compensate in other areas that are allowable under this agreement. We're trying to encourage that first. So perhaps they're struggling to meet the number of unique farms that they work with. That might just be due to the landscape of their district. It's changed over the past 3 years. Maybe there aren't as many farms available to work with, but they're able to do a lot of really excellent education events. So they might propose, we're going to decrease the amount of unique farms that we're working with, but we're going to increase the amount of events that we're producing to sort of make up for that deliverable. So as much as possible, we're trying to make that scenario happen. And then there might be some circumstances where a district is just too far behind on their deliverables, and it's not what they will be able to accomplish is not aligned with other districts who were awarded similar budgets. So we're keeping a really close eye on that. We don't want to claw back money if at all possible, but at the same time, we don't want to have a district be receiving a certain award when their performance is far under other districts who are receiving a similar award. So those are all the things that we're considering right now. I think we will end up needing an amendment to our parent agreement, but it will probably be more in the distribution of deliverables. Hopefully we won't have to reduce the budget for our parent agreement at all, because we do have some districts who are overperforming, and we would like to shift some money to them to, pay for the extra work that they're doing. Anything you want to add to that, Claire? Anything I missed?
No, I think we will have more information for the committee once we have information from districts. We are starting by asking districts what they think of the situation and what they would like to see in terms of shifting deliverables. So we're, as Emily said, we're really trying to avoid a scenario where it's sort of top-down determinations from council. And hopefully we can find a good solution with this for everybody. I will say one of the specific dynamics that has been most challenging with this grant is is how staff turnover impacts the deliverables. So we've had a couple districts where they've had a lot of turnover in their ag positions, and that's why they're behind. And one of the dynamics that I'm really sensitive to is the fact that a lot of times there's turnover because wages might not be competitive. Wages can only be competitive if there's guaranteed funding. And so we don't want to create a dynamic where we're pulling the very thing that the district needs to, fix the problem. So we might have to, just do individual, negotiation with districts around specific dynamics. But I think we can do that. But if you have any, I guess, overall questions or concerns about this situation right now, we could talk about that. But just a flag, we will have more specifics for you to review in the future.
Yep. And I will just add that organizational capacity building is a component, a pretty significant component of this agreement. So there is
Yeah.
flexibility if a district is not providing maybe all the technical assistance because they've had to hire new people, they can potentially shift some of that into training opportunities and making sure that whomever they've hired is trained up to be able to deliver that in the future. I think one other thing to note, we've done this as a 4-year agreement for the past 2 agreements. So the past 8 years, it's been 2 4-year agreements with amendments throughout. The agency is going to be releasing proposals in the fall, and those will be 2-year agreements in the future. So on the one hand, it's a little bit less stability for the districts, but on the other hand, I think we'll not be running into as many issues where deliverables were proposed, then the person who proposed them left, and then we end up needing to train someone up, and then they're struggling to meet deliverables that someone else had created. So I think hopefully the 2 years will provide enough stability for the districts while also being a little bit more flexible to those changes. Any questions, concerns, thoughts about our approach?
Yeah, Kate. Oh, okay. Sorry, I thought you had your hand raised. Okay. If there are no questions, I think we'll keep moving, just looking at the agenda. But if you hear anything from your district that you makes you think of a question, feel free to reach out to me and Emily. So then the ag team update.
Yeah, so we received 4 applications for our agriculture advisory team. This committee reviewed the request for proposals several months ago, if you remember. One individual is a district manager, and then the other ones are district staff. And we are planning on asking all of them to be a part of the committee. We are awarding them, we agreed on approximately 10 hours per month throughout the remainder of the agreement. We have $35,000 in total for this particular committee. So that will leave us some extra funds in there if we want to use some of that money for supporting other people who might help with a specific project related to this committee, or if we want to have an agricultural day where everyone gets together and hammers out some strategy, we can help pay for events and things like that. So there is some leeway in there, but that's kind of how we've structured it. So we're planning on having monthly meetings, and the 10 hours a month will cover both the meeting and then extra time worked on initiatives that that this committee brings up. Our applications, folks were really interested specifically on onboarding and continued professional development and support of ag staff. So I think that's going to be a lot of what we're focusing on, is creating resources for training, maybe some standard protocols around what goes into job descriptions, what training is expected for new ag staff, that sort of thing. None of this is going to be compulsory for the districts, but we're trying to make it as easy as possible for the districts, as well as provide that foundation so that the level of service expected can be sort of, the same across districts as we've discussed previously. I think that's the update for that. We don't need those contracts approved. They're below the threshold for the committee. And so we're just hammering out some of the details of language around that, and we'll be sending them out soon.
Thanks, Emily. If there are no questions, we will keep moving. The final item under this section is just a grant payment update. This is very quick. Our finance policy, which was reviewed and updated and approved by this committee earlier this year, identifies that council should be paying invoices from districts within 30 days. We had been several years ago, all the way up to 90 days average turnaround time. At the end of last fiscal year, so at the end of FY25, we were down to just under 40 days. So we are closing in on that 30-day number. I will say one of the things when I look at individual invoices, 40 days actually might be a higher estimate than what's actually happening. One of the things we've noticed is that when we enter the invoice in our system, we're entering the date that's on the invoice, which is not always the date that the district sends it to us. So I just want to note that, like, we actually are probably a little bit better than 40 days, but that would require some cleanup work to get those numbers more accurate. And then there are just individual situations that tend to skew the number a little bit, just where we have an invoice submitted, but not the deliverables, and then we're waiting for the deliverables, things like that. All that's to say, I think we've improved a lot, and I want to thank Lena and also Rick and Bill, who are actually doing the payments. A lot of the improvements have resulted from doing more frequent ACH payments. Previously, we were doing them on a schedule of about once a month. That really wasn't allowing us to pay invoices as frequently as we needed. So now we're up to twice a month, sometimes even more, like we're doing an extra one today for a specific situation. But yeah, I just want to thank Bill, Lena, and Rick for doing the work to make that happen and bringing those numbers down. In most cases, even though our average is 40 days turnaround time, in most cases, we are getting invoices paid in under 2 weeks. So it's been a big improvement.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for doing that. And 40 is better than 90.
It is.
You are exceeding 90.
But
I know,
40,
and
but
I
like
can
you
talk
said,
about. Yeah,
sometimes
go ahead,
the
Richard.
deliverables all aren't. So to me, that the start time is when you have all your information.
Yep.
Yeah, it's hard for us to track that just functionally. We can recalculate based on the date the invoice is approved, but that also has its problems. All that's to say, like, we can get into the nitty-gritty of how we calculate it, but I do think overall we've seen a great improvement, and overall we are getting to most invoices within 2 weeks. So
Yeah, I agree with you, and thank you.
Yep.
The whole group of you.
okay. Any other grants updates?
I guess I'll just add, this was the first time, I think, since I've been in this position in 4 years, that all of our Ag CWIP reporting was turned in on time. So huge thank you to all of the districts who've been doing a lot of work to get things caught up, and to make sure that it was timely. And, that plays a big role in turning around those particular invoices in a timely manner as well. So, just wanted to put that out there that we're really excited that all of the reporting was done in a timely manner. And that's great.
Again, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we have about 15 minutes left, and the next item we have is an admin update and then a discussion of district core services. I would propose to the committee that we table the district core services discussion because I believe we'll be talking about that at the board meeting, and
Yep.
this would just be sort of a preliminary discussion. So I
Do you
can
want a
go.
motion to table? It's up to
I
you.
think that's up to you. I don't know if we need a motion, but I just wanted to check with the agenda to make sure you're okay if I continue with the admin updates.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I think this will be relatively quick, but it's just updating you on some items we've discussed before. Council had a request in for office space with ANR. We had initial approval of this, and we were just working out the details. That approval has been rescinded. Unfortunately, there has been, the governor has issued a return to office order for all state employees. And in light of the return to office order, ANR now thinks they no longer have space. But they are working out the details of the return to office order. We may hear more in the future once they have a better handle on what their capacity is, that re-extends the offer. But I just wanted to flag that the return to office order would also impact the Agency of Agriculture, which already had no more limited space than ANR. We are a little bit back to the drawing board on this, so we'll keep these lines of communication open with both agencies to see as the return to office order plays out what it looks like. But I'm also planning on meeting with Building and General Services directly to see if they have any other solutions for council. That might be an appropriate route to go, perhaps a more appropriate route to go. The route we've been taking so far has been going to our partners and asking them to run it up the chain.
Right.
We can potentially just go to BGS directly. So I will be planning to start that meeting, but just to let you know, this is why we're not in an office space yet. It's been a difficult process. Procurement policy update. At our last board meeting, the board requested that I take the procurement policy to the Attorney General's office. They've reviewed it, and in their opinion, they believe that NRCC should be subject to all state bulletins, which would supersede council's procurement policy, except in maybe some specific operational ways. So I'm still working out the details of that. The difficulty with this is that council cannot comply with the relevant bulletins. It's Bulletin 5 and Bulletin 3.5. Both of those bulletins issued by the Agency of Administration rely on certain procedures that require access to state systems like the state accounting system Vision or the state procurement system VT Buys. We just don't have access the same way other agencies do. So I'm working with the Agency of Administration now to try to figure out details of, one, if we can get a waiver. They do issue waivers for some entities that just where the bulletins don't, in their opinion, apply. So that's the first ask, is if we can get a waiver in certain, for certain types of procedures. And then the second part of that question is, if we can't get a waiver, what exactly would we need to do to comply? And I think that would be a huge shift and potentially a prohibitive shift. So we're just gonna have to work this out with Agency of Administration, but and with the Attorney General's office, if we're running into something where it's just fundamentally a case where they're sort of misinterpreting some aspect of our organization. So this is ongoing in the time. So right now, what we're trying to do is comply to the best of our ability, which includes things like shifting to using the state of Vermont grant and contract forms. So if you'll notice, some of the materials I've provided have been using the state templates. I think we should be doing that regardless. Just because we are a state entity, we need to be using the state's forms. I think it provides us better, it helps us to check our boxes better in terms of like legal requirements. And help protect council a little bit better. So we are shifting to using the state templates. But beyond that, that's sort of the easy part that we can do right now. Beyond that, the process related stuff is all going to have to go through this process of not a negotiation, but just figuring it out with AOA. So pause there, see if there's any questions, comments, concerns.
It is what it is. We just have to figure it out as we go, I guess.
It sounds like a really difficult thing, Claire, for you to be struggling with. Thanks for going through all of it. It's not easy.
And I think this is, I just want to flag that I think we're going to run into this kind of situation more and more. Council has become a lot higher profile. We're dealing with more money. We're engaged in a lot more state initiatives. We're going to be on people's radar. And as a consequence, we're just going to run into these questions. We've been off the radar and so small for so long. This is just growing pains. I think we can get it figured out, but it won't be quick. I'm also still working on a number of other issues that we started with the state over a year ago. It's going to take a while, but I will keep the committee updated as we go along.
Yep.
Well,
On that note,
it
go
might be
ahead.
really good reasons to pressure BGS to find office space for us.
Everything would be easier if we had access to resources.
Right.
On that note, there is an update, I guess, about the state insurance. So a year or more ago, I approached the Agency of Agriculture asking about insurance status for both council and for the districts. There's a section of statute that says that districts can qualify for state provided insurance, or that districts should be afforded state insurance as though they were agencies. I've had that confirmed by the Attorney General's office and by AOA. They both say, yes, these entities are covered. The question becomes how. I've reported this to you guys before, sorry for the recap, but the question becomes how they set rates for us and how much we end up having to pay for that insurance. I just got information from them about setting rates for FY27. I'm going to be sending out information to the districts to collect, or I guess a solicitation for information from the districts, which includes information about how much they spend in payroll, as well as the types of insurance that they currently have. This is a very messy process because usually the state doesn't set rates this way. They already have various information from agencies about assets and payroll and et cetera. So that's just to say we're starting that process. I don't know where that's going to lead. There are still a number of outstanding questions. For example, unemployment insurance is handled by a separate department that's handled by like the human resources side of things. So I just as of last week got forwarded to yet another person within the state to talk about that insurance specifically. So we may have a little bit more of a lag on unemployment insurance. I don't think it's relevant for council. We don't have employees. That's covered through VACD. It would be relevant for districts. So still trying to work through all of that. But I guess the good news is that the ball is rolling. They're asking us for specific information, which I'm going to be providing them this month. So that's the update there. Are there any other questions there? Okay. We've talked about these next two items, the election procedures, the district elections, and the officer succession. So I don't really have any other agenda items under admin updates. Any other questions?
Claire, we have a board meeting, White River has a board meeting tomorrow afternoon. I requested that we have an action item on the agenda to formally, I guess, appoint, or at least to get the support of the full board for, different appointments. For example, my position on the committee, who ends up replacing Rick on the supervisory union. I just feel like this has been handled kind of informally, and it ought to be voted on by the board as an election. But are there other procedures that need to happen? I mean, I think that needs to happen regardless, just even if it's a recommendation, but I'm not sure. Or is that it?
So we have treated it very informally, in part because it's been difficult to fill all of our positions. And so if
Yeah,
anybody says they can do it, we've just said, great, you can do
right,
it.
sure,
Um,
yeah.
But yes, ideally, so any appointment made from the district. So the district wants to formally nominate or recommend somebody for a position. I would recommend that that be in the district's, the minutes of a board
Sure.
meeting.
Right.
And that's pretty straightforward. We don't have any separate procedure for that. So then what happens is that person goes to the supervisory union level. Again, I would recommend that the formal appointment be made in a board meeting and recorded in the minutes. We don't have a separate procedure for that right now. We would just rely on board meeting minutes. And then usually the way we've done it is that I am in contact with the district managers who let me know the results of whatever appointments are made. They, as Rick outlined, there's our statute is strange in that the supervisory unions are supposed to have voting, one designated person voting on who the appointment to council is. Most of our supervisory unions just have two districts, and so it's a two-person vote. We probably need to revise that section of statute because it's not a very workable system if it's a truly competitive election. I'm glad to hear that that White River and Winooski have found a compromise there. I mean, really, we do rely on districts working together to come to a consensus as much as possible. I think so there may be some elements of this that would require a statute change in the future to create a better system. But for the time being, I would just recommend people meet, take minutes, and let me know the results.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. That's kind of that was my thought.
Yep.
Yeah, our supervisory union has been doing that ever since I've been involved. We meet yearly,
Yep.
jointly, and every 2 years we determine, because that's what the term is, we determine amongst ourselves who wants to do it, who will do it, and then also an alternate.
Yep.
It's been working for us. We've kind of switched back and forth between Linda Course and myself as the council rep or alternate.
Yeah. And I will say that, this is our process. Everything's coming up from the district level. And I want to, encourage people to be, meeting, talking about this with their fellow districts.
Yeah.
From my perspective, one of the challenges that we could face in the future is if there's quite a bit of turnover in these positions, like Rick is no longer going to be board chair. We don't have a great depth of institutional knowledge within council. We have a handful of board members. Bill, Richard, you've been around for and heavily involved for a while. But newer board members tend to not have the level of knowledge or experience. That does worry me. I worry about our succession and continuity, about what that looks like in the future. Obviously, we still have our staff here that are happy to help, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the board itself has the decision-making authority. And so if you have ideas about ways that we can support members better, to get more people involved or to, you know, have better continuity between, incoming and outgoing members. I'm really interested to hear that. I think we'll be working on some of that regardless. This is a priority for VACD as well, since sort of in the same boat, how to, do better trainings and support board members. But specifically for council, if you guys have any ideas, let me know. I can try to put in place things that make things easier for you guys.
Unfortunately, Claire, the want and the desire may be there, but after 50 years, and approaching 80 in a few years, you're going, when can I back off and finish up some of my own projects?
Yeah.
I understand, Richard. I think we have a number of people who have been eyeing retirement for a very long time, but I appreciate having you guys here. So,
And I appreciate the fact that
Yep.
people think we have the ability
Yeah.
to be able to do this, but we have experience, and it's hard to get as a younger person. But then again, there are some young people in their 30s and 40s that are very knowledgeable about. But then if they're in actual agriculture, they don't have the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
that's been our challenge. We've had a number of younger people trying to join and be involved, and even the quarterly meetings have been a challenge, whether because of childcare or job requirements. So we can think about other ways to keep people engaged in the future. But yeah, I think right now that feels like the next big thing we need to work on is board support and structures and succession. So
Yep.
And some of it, and I've brought it up before, and I know it's not the subject they want to go to, is the compensation for being on some of these boards.
Yep.
If the state would realize that their antiquated amounts they have allocated for these meetings, you aren't going to get some of the younger people even to try, because it's going to cost them more than than what they can
Yep.
get through
yeah,
participation.
Yeah.
that is something we're going to continue working on. And just a quick update on that note, I've made the request of the Agency of Agriculture to increase our per diem. They say they can't technically do that because they don't oversee the board. So I'm actually going directly to AOA about that because somebody has to be able to approve that in our
Yep.
budget. And I believe it's our budget analyst. So I will be making a request to increase our per diem rate, but
Mhm.
And for say it's not for myself, but it's try to get future members
Yeah.
on the boards.
Yeah.
And some of that would entice them. But
Yeah.
anyway,
potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's this weird middle ground where reimbursement at a low rate, it feels almost like feels almost worse than being purely volunteer or purely paid. So,
Right.
um, well, thank you all. We are at time. I don't, again, I think we can defer the core services discussion to the board meeting.
Yep.
But I would leave that to you all. I'm happy to keep going if you'd like to, but otherwise, I think we need a motion to adjourn.
I could make that motion if the remainder of the discussion isn't that pertinent.
I'll second that.
Okay.
All those in favor, aye?
All right.
Aye.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Yep.